Most Christians genuinely love the Bible. We read it, we listen to sermons about it, we hear verses quoted in church, in books, on podcasts, and online. But here's a question we may not ask very often. When I read a passage of Scripture, how do I decide what it means? Why do I understand it the way I do? In a world full of sermons, podcasts, YouTube teachers, TikTok clips, Instagram reels, and social media voices, how do we learn to think carefully about Scripture for ourselves? Hello, and welcome to Understanding Scripture. This series is really about a simple idea, learning to understand Scripture better. And before we go any further, I want to be clear about what that means. This series is not about finding secret meanings in the Bible. It's not about becoming a biblical scholar. And it's definitely not about making Bible study feel intimidating. In fact, there's an idea we'll come back to often. The plain things are the main things. The core message of Scripture isn't hidden from the average believer. You don't need a seminary degree to understand the gospel, to know God, or to grow in your faith. That doesn't mean every passage is easy to understand. Sometimes we need to slow down and put in a little effort. Here's an important thought. When we read the Bible, we are interpreting what we read. All of us. We bring things with us to the text. Our experiences, our culture, things we were taught growing up, sermons we've heard, theological traditions, sometimes assumptions we don't even realize we have. That doesn't mean we can't understand the Bible well. It simply means we shouldn't always assume our first impression of a passage is the best one. The Bible was written in ancient languages by real authors to real people living in cultures and historical settings very different from our own. And sometimes, if we miss those differences, we can miss something important in the text. It even happens to people who have been Christians for decades. Usually it doesn't lead to some dramatic theological error, but it can cause us to miss something the passage is actually saying. So yes, understanding Scripture better matters. We also live in a really unusual moment in history. We have access to more Bible teaching than any generation before us. We can listen to sermons all day long, podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, online ministries, and a lot of that is very helpful. There are many excellent teachers doing thoughtful, careful work. But there's a challenge too. How do we know whether what we're hearing is actually a good explanation of the biblical text? Because confident teaching is not always accurate teaching. And without realizing it, we can start depending on personalities and popular voices to tell us what the Bible means, instead of quietly and prayerfully studying for ourselves. The goal is not to become suspicious of every teacher we listen to. We need good teachers. I've benefited enormously from people who know far more than I do, including my pastor, especially my pastor. Even so, it's important that we grow in our own understanding of the Bible, rather than depending on others to do all the thinking for us. Let me say something else clearly. I've been studying the Bible for a long time, and I'm still learning. I still encounter passages that make me stop and think. I still discover assumptions I didn't realize I had. And sometimes I have to reconsider something I thought I really understood. I think that's healthy. We can learn to slow down, ask better questions, become more aware of our own assumptions, and use good tools to help us when we need them. In other words, we can all become better readers of the Bible. So, throughout this series, we're going to explore some practical ways to do that. We'll talk about things like context, literary genres, historical and cultural background, what Bible versions we should use, word studies. We'll look at difficult passages, common mistakes in interpretation, and review tools like study Bibles, online resources, and more. And I'll try not to bury any of this under unnecessary jargon or academic language. I want these videos to be approachable and practical. My hope is that by the end of this series, you'll have a few more Bible study tools in your toolbox, and that you'll feel more confident when you come to passages that aren't immediately clear. Not so we can win arguments, not so we can sound smarter, but so we can know God better, understand His Word more clearly, and live out what we learn. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join me as we learn together to understand the Bible better.